Shadows in the Mansion, Alone Together. Part 5. She had chosen another dress from the collection he had bought her, unaware, of course, that he had chosen it for her. A judgment made with deliberate precision, crafted from quiet observation. He had studied her form through flickering security footage, each frame offering a glimpse of the delicate slope of her shoulders, the quiet grace in her posture, the fluid lines of her silhouette as she moved through his home like she was trespassing in her own dream. And yet, despite every measured detail, he hadn't anticipated this. The dress didn't merely fit her, it belonged to her. The indigo fabric moved like water, catching the light and folding against her form in reverent silence, as though every thread had been waiting just for her. With each subtle movement, it shifted, drawing his gaze to the contours she seemed wholly unaware she possessed. Her damp dreadlocks clung softly to her shoulders, trailing down like strands of midnight, framing her in a way that made it impossible not to look. He watched in stillness. A quiet satisfaction stirred in his chest, uninvited, possessive. She was wearing something he had chosen, a detail that should have been meaningless. And yet, it wasn't. The realization embedded itself in him like a splinter, quiet but undeniable. It was in the way she changed the room just by standing in it. She didn't just exist here, she transformed the space. Obasi had spent years curating beauty, museums, exhibits, collections. He had shaped the world around him with precision and discipline. But now, looking at her, he felt destabilized. The mansion, which always felt unfinished in some elusive way, now felt whole. There was nothing more to add, no adjustments to be made, not a single thing more that it needed. And that realization unsettled him. Meanwhile, now that they were both together again, he realized this was his chance. He should tell her the truth now. Obasi swallowed and glanced at her. "You can't sleep," he said gently. Nasha blinked, startled slightly by his voice. Then her eyes softened. "No," she replied. A pause passed between them. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. He understood. She didn't want to sleep alone. Not tonight. Not with whatever still lingered in her mind, whatever kept her shoulders tense, her eyes quietly searching every shadow. He hadn't missed the flicker of the lights earlier, nor the way she'd frozen when they dimmed again just moments ago. She wasn't afraid of him, not in the way she had been, but she hadn't let her guard down either. She had chosen a dress, not a nightgown, not sleepwear, though he had left her a set in the trash bag. She was still prepared to run. Another flicker from the overhead lights seemed to tip her decision. She stepped fully into the room, then crossed and reclaimed the opposite sofa without a word. A silence settled between them, awkward, unformed. He set the book aside. Her gaze wandered again, toward his sculptures that lined the room. "Don't you get tired of looking at such sad art?" he asked, breaking the silence. It must have come from such a sad, miserable person. She turned her head slightly, eyes still on the piece. "No," she said. Her voice was soft, but sure. "They're not all sad, and the ones that are, those are the most powerful." Obasi watched her carefully. Only someone capable of immense love could hurt so deeply, she continued, almost to herself, and still express their pain with such precision, so subtly, so completely. The largest part of him would be his ability to love. Her words lingered in the air, soft yet staggering. Obasi sat motionless, the weight of it pressing into his chest, quiet and undeniable. He didn't think he had much love left in him, not after everything, not after burying his entire family, after building a life from ashes, only to have his wife, his last tether to wholeness, slip away before she ever slept a single night in this mansion he built. He had constructed this mansion like a monument to survival, every piece a declaration that he could still create, still endure, even with nothing left. This girl was holding up a mirror to a part of him he thought long buried. She had named something inside him he had tried for years to silence. The ability to feel that deeply, to hurt that deeply, to love, and that shook him. Her hand reached out, fingertips brushing over the smooth curve of his sculpture beside her. Obasi stilled. She touched it like it mattered, like it carried meaning. And in that moment, he felt her hand on him, felt her presence like heat against his skin. His body betrayed him, swiftly, without warning. Heat bloomed low and sharp, rising through him like wildfire. It was the way she sat there, the way her voice wove through the silence like something sacred, her fingers gliding across the sculpture with a reverence that felt almost intimate. His breath caught. He shifted subtly, just enough to adjust his posture, to create a semblance of composure. A flick of the knee, a repositioning of the book, a carefully measured exhale meant to steady the storm erupting beneath his skin. But nothing could steady it. Not really. The reaction was visceral, uninvited, and deeply unwelcome. And he hated that it had happened here, now. He had mastered himself over the years, and his desires, regardless of the many women who tried to seduce him, had ceased to exist after losing Karen. What was this? There was something about her, this haunted, delicate girl who didn't even know she'd just touched a piece of his soul. The way her fingers moved across his sculpture reached somewhere in him he thought long gone, a part of him he never expected to feel again. He clenched his jaw and forced his gaze away from her, willing himself to calm, to breathe, to think. But it was no use. He had tried not to look at her that way, had told himself again and again that all he wanted was to protect her. But now, as she sat there in the dress he had chosen for her, touching his art, speaking words that seemed like spells, seeing him in ways no one else had ever managed, Obasi realized the truth. For the first time in a long, long while, he was in trouble, and it terrified him. The silence stretched, thick with something unspoken, as if the very air between them had shifted, grown heavier, more intimate. Nasha's fingers lingered a moment longer on the sculpture before falling back to her side. The soft dying rain outside, a faint percussion on the glass. Despite his better judgment, he returned to watching her quietly, torn between wonder and ruin. His thoughts tangled, his pulse refusing to slow. She remained, unaware, untouched by the storm she had stirred in him. Obasi exhaled, his voice low when he finally found it. "You sound quite taken with the artist," he said. The words threaded with careful calm, though his voice came out hoarser than intended. It wasn't just conversation. It was a need, sudden, unshakable. He had to know what she would think, if she knew it was him. "Perhaps the two of you might get along if you ever met." She hesitated, and for a moment it seemed she struggled to meet his gaze. "No," she said plainly. "I don't think I would." His brow lifted. "No?" A pause. Then, I don't like men." Something inside him went still. A dry tightness closed around his throat. "What do you mean?" he managed. She didn't flinch. She just answered. "I've never really gotten along with them," she said. "I don't like the way they look at me. I especially don't like being touched by them." Her eyes flicked back to the sculpture. "And while the artist's work is beautiful," she hesitated, "he's still a man." The words landed harder than they should have. She had offered them so plainly, so unapologetically, nothing veiled, nothing softened. And somehow it felt like a rejection, not of the artist, of him. She didn't like to be touched, didn't like to be looked at, And here he was, looking, feeling, wanting. A breath escaped him, quiet, controlled. "I see," he murmured. It was all he could manage, but then he chanced it. "That's quite a broad brush," he said carefully. "To rule out all men for what a few have done. And how can you be so sure the artist is even a man?" She stiffened. Slightly, but he caught it. He'd struck something. Still, her voice came, soft, but edged with quiet steel. "I've met many men, and they've all been the same." She didn't blink. "They all want one thing. I don't know a single man who can deny it." Her gaze slid to the sculpture again. "And the artist." Her fingertips skimmed its surface, tracing the grooves as though they meant something only she could read. "I can tell by the weight of it, the certainty in the carving, the pressure in the lines. It's deliberate, forceful." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "It's masculine, or it's always been, in my experience." Obasi clenched his jaw. He said nothing. But in his mind, a name surfaced, Kelechi. Others he couldn't name. He wanted to speak, to tell her he wasn't like them, that he wouldn't flinch from her brokenness, that he would never take anything she didn't offer freely. But the words lodged in his chest, too delicate, too easily misheard. So instead, he sat with it, let the weight of it fall over them both like dust on stone, and tried, desperately, not to want more, now that he understood just how much it might cost her to give it. A long pause followed. Then, almost as an afterthought, so quiet it could have been a confession, she added, "And they're all liars." Obasi was caught off guard by her next words. It struck him hard. Not because it was new, but because of the certainty in her voice, the way it landed like a final verdict as if aimed directly at him. He felt the instinct to defend rise in his chest, but it faltered before it reached his lips. What could he say that wouldn't sound like a defense of all men which he wouldn't do? And wasn't there some truth in what she'd said? A quiet truth that lingered uncomfortably close to his own silence. Case in point, he hadn't told her this mansion was his, had let her believe otherwise. Not with lies exactly, just omissions, calculated ones. And now, with her sitting there, so certain, so quietly wounded, he was suddenly unsure how to tell her the truth without proving her right. How could he tell her now without confirming what she already believed about men and their half-truths, their concealed intentions, their appetites? Because his body, it had betrayed him with its reaction to her. And so had his silence. He couldn't shake the damn feeling that she had, without realizing it, caught him guilty of both the things she most despised, wanting her, and lying. The weight of it pressed in on him, tighter, heavier, each second he sat there saying nothing. And now, more than ever, he needed to say something. But what? He shifted slightly, searching for a way to reroute the moment. "You know," he said after a pause, "I still haven't figured out how you made that sandwich taste like it was made in a restaurant. That wasn't just butter and chicken." Nasha blinked, startled by the shift. But then she laughed, softly, unexpectedly. "It was just a sandwich." "No," he said, rising and nodding toward the kitchen. "It was not just a sandwich." She tilted her head, suspicious, but when he took a slow step toward the kitchen and held his hand out in invitation, not to touch, just to gesture, she eventually followed. Obasi didn't need to lead her. The moment she entered the kitchen, something shifted. She was in her world now, familiar with the kitchen, opening drawers with quiet confidence, pulling ingredients from the fridge as if she'd lived there for years. As she moved, explaining little things, how she liked to fry the bread slightly longer, how a bit of lemon in the chicken mixture changed everything. Obasi didn't interrupt. He leaned against the counter, watching her with quiet reverence. This This was what he'd wanted from the beginning, to see her this way, not frightened, not defensive, just living and comfortable in his presence. She didn't notice the way he watched her then, the soft focus in his gaze, the steadiness of it. His thoughts began to stir with a tender kind of weight. He would never touch her, not unless she asked. He would never hurt her. Whatever she needed, she could have. He would make sure of it. He continued to lean casually against the counter, arms folded loosely as he watched her move, explaining the sandwich. Her voice quiet, so gentle but certain, her hands quick and practiced. There was something almost reverent in the way she touched each ingredient, as though even this simple task deserved care. He didn't say much, didn't want to interrupt. Every detail, every slight quirk of her lips as she focused, every furrow of her brow when she was trying to explain something just right. He smiled then, without meaning to, a small, fleeting curve of his mouth. She looked up and caught it, and to his quiet amazement, she returned it. She could never know how rare that smile was, how long it had been since anyone had seen it. Nasha blinked, heart skipping as their eyes met briefly. It surprised her, how easily he leaned there, unassuming. The energy she had once read as threatening now felt different, contained, calm, even, warm. She could feel it, not just in the way he stood back and gave her space, but in the way he watched without judgment. No sharp edges, no invasive stare, just presence. And something inside her softened. She didn't understand it, not really. She had never felt so at ease. Not around men. Not around anyone, really. Maybe it was because he had helped her. Or maybe there was something about him. Something honest in his quietness. Something startlingly gentle, especially for someone so big. When his hand grazed hers, just briefly, as she passed him a plate, her heart jolted. She froze for a second, barely breathing. He didn't seem to notice, but she did. She could feel the flush rising in her chest, the thrum of her pulse in her ears. Her fingers tingled where they had touched. It didn't make sense. None of this made sense. Why did she feel this way? Why now? Her gaze flicked to his face again. Those cheekbones, so sharply cut they looked sculpted. And those eyes, soft brown, deep and steady. He really was beautiful. The realization unsettled her, and yet it didn't scare her, not like she would have expected. She turned back to the bread, trying to hide her face from his view, her hands moving faster now, as if the rhythm might distract her from what she was feeling. But it was no use. Whatever this was, whatever strange new feeling was curling into her chest, it was real. And she wasn't ready for it. Not even close. Obasi shifted his weight, deciding once and for all. Now was the time, he would tell her now. And then, just as he opened his mouth to finally say it, that the mansion was his, and to tell her she could stay, forever if she wanted, that she didn't need to run. A birdsong cut through the kitchen window, clear and shrill. They both froze. Obasi glanced toward the light seeping through the high windows. The sun had risen, the rain had stopped. Morning had come. They'd spent the entire night talking, and neither of them had noticed. He turned toward her again. Nasha! But a sudden, sharp knock at the front door shattered the stillness. Her head snapped toward the sound, eyes wide, breath halting in her throat. Obasi's body tensed instinctively. That wasn't right. No one should have been coming. No one even knew he was here. No one should be here. He hadn't alerted the staff of his return, had made sure of it. The groundskeepers weren't scheduled until later in the week. Everyone knew the mansion was meant to be empty. Stay here, he said quietly, moving swiftly around the counter. But she didn't. By the time he reached the living room, Nasha was already there, eyes fixed on the front entrance, her body half hidden behind the edge of the wall. She looked terrified. Another knock, sharp, measured, intentional. Obasi's eyes narrowed. "What in the—" He stepped forward slowly, wiping his hands on a towel he hadn't realized he was still holding. Who could it be? There should be no footsteps on the gravel, no hand on the brass. Another knock, closer now, louder. The sound echoed through the front hall like a warning shot. Nasha began moving toward him, her breath tight, posture stiff with alarm. Obasi moved too, about to approach the door. Then came the sound that made his pulse hitch, the metallic slide of a key turning. His jaw clenched. The lock gave with a crisp, final click. A long breath dragged through his lungs. He stepped forward, placing his body between Nasha and the entrance. Then, all at once, the double doors swung open. Obasi blinked against the sudden flood of sunlight. His eyes couldn't adjust fast enough. The brilliance of it stunned him, turned the figure in the doorway into a silhouette etched in fire. He couldn't make out the face, but he knew the voice. "Obasi!" It was unmistakable, bright, familiar, and jarring. His breath caught sharply in his throat. The sunlight shifted. His vision cleared just enough to see the outline sharpen, resolve. Karen?